with Jon.
What is going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome to the Fantasy Time NBA DFS Playbook Show. It is 8 games on a Friday, post-Turkey Day, Black Friday weekend, Cyber Monday coming up. It's a big eventful day here at Fantasy Alarm. We have a great promo going on right now. For those of you who aren't yet a fan member of the Fantasy Alarm family, we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show here as well. James, how was your Turkey Day?
It was good. Very quality eats, John, I have to say. Only disappointment, okay? Everything was homemade. My mom, my wife, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, everything homemade. But one thing.
Okay.
My dad was like, you know what? We're making all this food. Let's go get dessert from a bakery that we've never tried before.
Sure.
And the apple pie sucked.
Wow.
And like, you know, apple pie is a staple. Like that's my go-to pie. If I'm picking a pie, I'm really only picking apple pie. My son didn't like it. I didn't like it. We were the only two to eat it. So everything was great until the pie. And of course, that had my mom and my dad super sad and overthinking everything. And my mom's already preparing the pie for next year, saying,
yeah,
I'm making the pie next year. I'm not buying it. So everything was great except the pie, John.
Are you a traditional like pie crust apple pie guy, or are you a Dutch apple pie fan? Because I'm a Dutch apple pie fan. If you're not familiar with Dutch apple pie it is instead of a traditional pie crust, it's like brown cinnamon sugar crumble as the pie crust, and it just adds a whole layer of awesomeness to the apple pie. So I highly recommend the Dutch apple pie the next time you get a go if you haven't had it before.
I feel like I don't have a preference because like apple pie is apple pie. That was like the first apple pie that I've ever had from anywhere that like wasn't good. And I was kind of after following such an elite dinner, I was like, oh, this is kind of disappointing that I'm not having like a great pie to top everything off.
So I felt the way you felt as well, and I'll still eat like any apple pie that gets put in front of me, but I now have a clear 101 apple pie preference. Right. If someone's like, hey, we're ordering apple pies or going to apple pies, to be like, if they have Dutch apple pie, lock that in. Otherwise, like I'll just take whatever they have.
Sure.
And then if you go to the stores, you get sort of the mini individual apple pies. I don't know if you grabbed like the tabletop pies, whatever. Those are also pretty baller. So anyways, you know, I like apple pie. I like vanilla ice cream, but we're here to talk some NBA DFS here on a Friday. It is Listener League Friday as well. So I'll go ahead, and those of you who haven't already checked out the description from today's morning show or haven't been in the Discord, link to our Listener League is provided there. I'll throw it in the chat here now as well. $5 Listener League, Watcher League, however you want to talk about it. Thank you guys tuning in. You can come compete against myself, Grande, Sean Mitchell, the rest of the crew here in some DraftKings fun this evening. What are the headlines here, Grande? It's injuries, right? It's who is and who isn't going to play. Tyrese Halliburton and Giannis, both questionable now. After last night, we talked about how I was building lineups with both in there. The immense value that is going to be opening up on this slate here potentially today that can make some pretty interesting lineup builds.
Yeah, you were super excited about both, and that both might not play.
My Halliburton Giannis lineup was actually really good, and now both those guys might not even play. So
yeah, and you definitely don't like to see the midday downgrade. The Giannis thing doesn't necessarily surprise me. Seeing him on the injury report to start the day, like just to start everything off, then you factor in like, oh well, this is also a matchup against Washington. Like maybe not something that, you know, he needs to like play through an illness for, but it's definitely the who's in, who's out. Zach LaVine, to add to that, he went through shoot around, but he's listed questionable. He was the late scratch last game. Duncan Robinson has been ruled out. Colby White has been added to the injury report for the Bulls. They could obviously elect to just use Alex Caruso as a starting point guard and maybe go bigger with Patrick Williams again, but obviously that's like significant news. If two Bulls starters are potentially out, then there's like, we have two massive totals. And does this Giannis news now impact Washington? Like, do we want to get to more Washington now? Because can they keep this game more competitive? There is a bunch of storylines that we are going to have to just kind of wait and see. Some of it's hard to talk about, right? Because like you could talk about it, but it's just like speculation. Like we can say, oh, well, if Giannis doesn't play, this is what we do. But then if he plays, it's like, well, that's all out the window. You're probably just playing these 4 guys on Milwaukee, and you probably can't get to much of Washington. So there's definitely some big news floating around that's come through the wire throughout the day. But
this is a 7:30 slate time too tonight. So in the past we've kind of also worried about it because we'd have 7:00 games and then we'd have 7:30 and all these staggered starts. So at least some of the news we are waiting on. Yes, the Indiana game and yes, the Milwaukee game are 8 p.m. starts, but it's not as if we have roster lock at 7 tonight. So a little bit more time. We might get that information just before the 7:30 tip on who is in or who is going to be out, as opposed to the hour, roster lock that we're used to having on these slates. So keep that in mind as well as you're building out your lineups here tonight. That roster lock is at 7:30 here this evening. Top price overall players on the slate again: Jokic, Giannis, Halliburton, and Sabonis, all up over 10K. Let's jump into the point guard position. When we saw the total, we saw the matchup, we were like, oh, Halliburton's at 11K, but it's for good reason, and I may still be looking just to shove him in the lineup, especially with the value here. We have to at least talk about the fact that he could still play. We're not just going to assume he doesn't play. If he does play, he is probably my favorite play on the slate. I would play him over Giannis, I think, tonight if I had to pick one. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, James. Just the way that he has been impacting these games. I mean, the scoring that we're getting out of him has been elite. The assist numbers are ridiculous. We're getting some defense out of him here. Definitely big on Halliburton here tonight.
Who do you trust to keep a game more competitive? The Detroit Pistons or the Washington Wizards?
Detroit has Cade, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran.
I know, but what if I told you Detroit was significantly worse this year than Washington?
Oh, so I understand that. I know the losing streak that they're on here. I think they dropped like 10 straight or whatever it is, right? Like, or did they lost to Denver still, even when Joker was ruled out, right? Or did they pull that one off? I don't even remember anymore.
They lost.
They win that one or lose that one?
They lost. They lost 12 in a row.
Okay. Yeah, 12 in a row. I knew it was something like that. But talent for talent, it's on the Pistons side.
Yeah.
So I think Pistons have a better chance. And Vegas thinks that too. It's a closer point spread than the two games here. So, I'm still going to go with Halliburton in a game I think would be a little bit more competitive than what we're going to get out of this Washington and Milwaukee game if Giannis ended up playing.
It is definitely the scoring for Halliburton, because I've heard some reports saying, or just statements, I guess, saying Tyrese Halliburton's the last of the Mohicans in terms of true point guards. Because there are just, what is a point guard, right? Is Steph Curry a point guard? He's averaged 30 points for his career. We don't really have traditional point guards, and Halliburton has been one, but the 3-point shooting has been incredible. Was the wrist injury coming from 60 points over his last 2 games or 40 shot attempts over his last 2 games? When did he develop a wrist injury? Was he playing through a wrist injury when he went 37 and 16 and then 33 and 16? Obviously there was a downgrade. I do think he plays. If he doesn't, there's obvious value, and maybe even the most concrete value of the slate if his backup also sits in Andrew Nembhard, because we don't know the status of Nembhard either. But as it stands,
if Halliburton's out, you still play McConnell, I think, anyways. So.
Sure, I'm just saying there's always the risk of a split between them, and then if there's no split, it's the McConnell show, and there's Rick Carlisle's going to throw him out there for 35 minutes, which is great. So,
and the way Kate Cunningham and Jaden Ivey turned the ball over, he might have 9-10 steals today.
There's a strong possibility in that for sure.
So anyways, again, Halliburton's at 11K, certainly can get to that there. Dame might be the most popular play on the slate if Giannis gets ruled out. We saw that earlier this year, and then he went off for like 65, I think it was 67 against Toronto. So we know what Lillard can do when Giannis is off the floor here, saving a big boatload of money, getting to Dame here at 94. I don't really have a lot of interest in Curry. I don't really have a lot of interest in Fox, regardless of the news that broke around that time anyway. So I was going Halliburton. I was considering Lillard. And I was kind of popping down into this mid-tier range of James Harden at $8,100. But Cade certainly becomes more of an appealing play for me now, too, if we think this game stays a bit more competitive, if Halliburton ends up being ruled out, because the price point down to $7,800 is nice. He's coming off of a ceiling shooting game as well, 11 from 11 out of the line. You and I talk a lot about these guys. Like Cade Cunningham is a guy that should be slashing to the rim and, getting to the line. He's a guy that he's not great. He's developed to be a better outside shooter, but he's not a great outside shooter. He should be a guy that gets to the free throw line and kind of live there to make his points. I do like Cunningham at $7,800 as well.
Yeah, and I definitely think if Halliburton were to be out, it definitely doesn't hurt Cade given how foul happy he can be at times too. Like sometimes we look at him like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are we? I know you need more court time because it's been an injury-riddled couple seasons for you. And, like, we've seen this. Jokic was that. Şengün was that. Like, there's injury players or foul-happy players all the time. But Cade needs to figure that out. So I would definitely not hate Halliburton being out because I don't think Cade would be likely to get in foul trouble against someone like Nembhard or someone against someone like TJ McConnell. I like Cade either way. So did the rostership that we posted. He's he's in the top 10 in terms of ownership tonight. So the field also likes Cade Cunningham, but I think that's just, we kind of talked about it with Jaden Ivey and we're going to get to him. If Cade Cunningham is over a fantasy point per minute this year, you have to give him like almost X bump, right?
Yeah.
Like 0.5, just the pace and the matchup with Indiana, because they just don't care about defending. They
literally just played a game that had 300 points scored.
Dude, they hit an over 255 with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That is just not even.
That's what I'm saying. Like the projections on these guys. What did we talk about that day? If it's going to go over to the 247, I think it was, or 250, whatever it was, right? That like everybody's props were just going to hit, like just by the way the game was going to go. And then it did, because they went over 300 total points. So I feel the same way. Another high game. And Atlanta's the same way. We'll talk about, we talked about that the other day with the way Atlanta's been playing defense in those matchups. A lot on the slate, but those teams right now, you want teams that are playing them because they're playing no defense at a ridiculous pace. We just saw that come through. So I'm with you here. We'll play a lot of Detroit guys, I think, here today, and a lot of Pacers value on the other side as well. And if Halliburton gets ruled out, it definitely changes the way we look at the Pacers here tonight. You obviously looked at some of the rostership earlier today. No shock to anybody how highly rostered a lot of these guys were in these games as well. But talk to me about some more mid-tier plays here, like James Harden, someone you've been on at $8,100. Is Jordan Poole back-to-back ceiling shooting games now out of him? And if no Giannis and we think this game's competitive, maybe we go back to the well there. Like outside of Cade in this mid-tier, where else are we looking?
Yeah, I think Harden's fine. Harden has been pretty multifaceted with this new lineup, with Westbrook going to the bench. We finally got the minutes too, 36 minutes last game. That's great to see. And 3 for 7 shooting, not great, but we've talked about it a couple times. 8 for 12 from the free throw line. Like that's vintage James Harden, getting to the foul line even on nights where he doesn't have it, really scoring or shooting rather. But 9 assists. Now he has 7, 10, and 9 in the 3 games since Westbrook's moved to the bench. They've won all 3. And granted, 2 of them have come against the Spurs. But this is a massive pace-up spot for the Clippers. So I'm definitely okay getting to $8,100 James Harden, who has multi-position eligibility. No problem getting there. Cade, you mentioned. Chris Paul, I shouldn't continue to doubt what Chris Paul is doing at all, because we kind of said it earlier in the year, right? We said, if Draymond's not there, the offense is going to flow through Chris Paul. And Draymond's still not there. And again, If not
for getting ejected, he was well on his way to another double-double. So
yeah, I mean, 17 minutes, 17 fantasy points, 6 and 6. It's a great spot for Golden State. Golden State, a team that has like typically played fast. They're not playing slow this year, but 13th in pace seems, lagging behind, I'd say, than it has been in years past. The Spurs are 4th in pace. So like this is a pace up spot for Golden State. We know if you ever like watch how Chris Paul operates, like made basket, Chris Paul's like trying to push up the floor immediately. Like he is a very, even in his advanced age, at least in terms of NBA years, like he is always trying to push the pace. San Antonio also 26th in defense. Mm-hmm. I'm okay getting to Chris Paul. He's probably the one Warrior. I'm like, yeah, if he's going to start and play 30 minutes a night, then 38 minutes in that overtime game, 33 in regulation. The Warriors are not playing guys that many minutes. Like outside Steph, everyone's kind of been limited this year. And I think that's also because Steve Kerr's like has no idea how to handle his rotations right now. But I think Chris Paul is pretty safe. But I don't love the rest of this tier, John. Truthfully, I don't know if you have anyone else that you'd throw in the mix. But
no, I go down to Ivy. Obviously,
it's Ivy.
I think that's the obvious play here. $5,100. A lot of people are getting to Jaden Ivey as well. If you go, we just got some updated rostership about 10 minutes ago, so we'll make sure we get that moved on over to the site for everybody. But just for now, Ivey looking like the 4th highest roster player on the slate, around 25% tonight. So, no shock that people want to play Detroit tonight in that matchup against the Pacers, and vice versa here, Pacers versus Detroit. So, not chalk I'm looking to fade. You and I were talking about it. And I'm actually now thankful this is happening for my best ball teams, because I think Jaden Ivey is a really good player.
Yep.
One reason or another, he just was out of favor with the coaching staff, but lately he's been getting more opportunity to play, playing fairly well. I still think we haven't seen the ceiling level out of play that we saw at times last year out of Jaden Ivey, but if he's going to start at $5,100 in this matchup, yeah, you have to certainly throw him back out there.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm playing multiple lineups, again, isn't it the Cade thing? But like we're getting a $2,700 discount. Like
Cade's getting a lot of love too, though. Again, it's a game stack of this one. If you go look at the roster here,
no, not. That's not what I'm saying. Like you're talking like from a fantasy point per minute aspect. Like he is less than a fantasy point per minute, but like you have to adjust based on the matchup. So it would not surprise you if Jaden Ivey got 30 minutes and put up 30 fantasy points, because that's what we've seen in years past. Like he doesn't, we don't know if him and Cade really go well together. If Cade can space the floor like he has, I think that would make life easier for Jaden Ivey too. But he is good peripherally. If you just look at the games where he's been extended, he has good peripherally, and we know he can score the basketball. So I think Jaden Ivey, if he's not the first player I've plugged into all my lineups tonight, he's second. I mean, it's point guard, shooting guard, 5,100 in a massive pace up spot against a team who doesn't play any defense. And, former lotto pick just a year ago, Killian Hayes completely iced out of the rotation. What does Detroit have to lose playing Jaden Ivey at this point? They've lost 12 games in a row. So Jaden Ivey, if not, again, first in my lineup, he's second. Like he's just immediately involved in every lineup I'm building.
I also play Alex Caruso, regardless of who's in or out. He was starting with LaVine and DeRozan. So if White and LaVine are out, or if White's out, like it's just going to help, I think, Caruso anyways. He's a guy that I talk a lot about, where generally he gives you good defensive numbers, and if the offensive comes, he can pop off a little bit. We've seen some inconsistencies, but the inconsistencies are still resulting in 25, 26, 21 fantasy points here. We saw him pop off for 38, back against Phoenix when he had the 5 blocks and steals. He had the point score. So if he can hit a couple more shots and then give you the 3+ blocks and steal effort, which we know he's capable of doing, he's a great value at $4,800. I wish he was still the point guard small forward, because those were pretty good eligibility, but I do still like Alex Caruso. And then we talk about NAW and TJ McConnell here. Obviously, I think regardless of Nembhard, I know Nembhard probably ends up getting the start, but that just means McConnell's the backup here. I like McConnell a lot at 4,200 if Halliburton gets ruled out. But NAW is the guy that's getting a lot of love here tonight. 29 minutes, 33 the night before, with McJane and McDaniels out. Can see a lot of people going here against Sacramento.
Yeah, would you would you throw Nembhard into that mix if you played? Like into the trio of those guys?
Yeah, I've never had good luck with Nembhard, so
you mean you didn't assume you didn't guess that one game where he went for 65 fantasy points last year? And like I remember that game because I think it was against the Lakers and he went for like 65 fantasy points and they outright beat the Lakers, and that's when I knew. I'm like, oh, Lakers stink. They're not going anywhere. They just lost Andrew Nembhard.
Yeah. Again, I don't.
Who's not a bad player.
He's fine, but he doesn't often do enough for me, I guess. So I don't know. If he starts, I'll play him. But I still think McConnell's a guy that we have a better track record of McConnell coming in, a guy that comes off the bench and plays 30 minutes, in these scenarios, or even starting and playing a bunch of minutes in these scenarios and being very productive. That I think I'd rather trust it. Aaron's saying that eyes on the Detroit side. Yeah, listen, we agree.
Yep.
We are 100% in on playing the Detroit side of this game here. Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Duran, even when he comes in here as well. Alec Burks off the bench. There's going to be a lot of value here in this game in general, especially if Halliburton gets ruled out, because we'll go. I mean, do you have any other point guards? Do you want to just jump over to shooting guard now?
No, but I will say if Nembhard were to start, John, the tired Wired. Tired is playing Andrew Nembhard. Wired is playing TJ McConnell.
Agreed. Shooting guard here. Just kind of jumping to that game because of where the rostership's at. Buddy Hield is $5,500. If Halliburton gets ruled out, I mean, everybody was already playing Buddy Hield tonight anyways because of the last two games for him. 35 and 31 minutes, 30 and 50 fantasy points. Like, there was no secret. Everybody was playing Buddy Hield. 70%? What do we think? Like, what's the rostership on Hield here if Halliburton gets ruled out? I said that in the Discord earlier today, where like if Giannis got ruled out, I think everybody was playing Middleton. You start your lineups with Hield and Middleton tonight if Halliburton and Giannis get ruled out, don't you?
Yeah, I mean that was the only reason when I said the Jaden Ivey thing that he was first. I would say that Middleton without Giannis would probably be like the first person I would plug him in. It'd be hard not to go there after the minutes bump and the price, but Buddy, like in any scenario, Buddy is firmly in play. Like Halliburton in, you're playing Hield. Yeah. If Halliburton's out, you're playing Hield because, again, like it's hard to ever sit here and say someone's going to go 6 for 6 from 3 and 7 for 12 from 3. But on the flip side, Buddy Hield's been one of the best shooters over the last decade, right? It's like, when you watch Buddy Hield, you're like, that dude can space better than almost anyone, like consistently throughout like the NBA. And all we've wanted this year was either trade him to a place where, not even just this year, but just like recently, or play him where he is like spacing the floor, and you see the fruitful labors that come from Buddy Hield starting and playing 30 minutes. Like again, you're not going to predict 13 out of your last 18 from 3, but he's still too cheap for a guy who can just score. Like, yes, he shoots threes, but he just scores. So Buddy Hield, shooting guard, small forward, lock and load, all formats, and differentiate. This is the good chalk, bad chalk conversation. It's good chalk, differentiate elsewhere, and move on.
Like I said, Middleton's got the same eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. Pretty elite coming off the 29 minutes against Boston, 31 fantasy points, 34 against Washington, and just 23 minutes of time before that. If this game ends up being more competitive because Giannis gets ruled out, sky's the limit here, I think, for Middleton. And Aaron agreed. Hield, shooting guard, Middleton, small forward. Start your lineups. Jaden Ivey, right? And just kind of like, there you go. Three guys in the 5K building off your lineups. If we are looking to spend up today at this position, you got George, Anthony Edwards. A lot of Minnesota is getting love on the rostership here tonight as well. We've seen Sacramento now fall back-to-back games against the Pelicans here. Karl Anthony Towns is the cover of our pre-show today. We were kind of leaning a little bit more into that, but Anthony Edwards getting some love tonight as well.
Yeah, no problem getting to Ant. The best perimeter defender Sacramento has in Keegan Murray is out. We're going to see nobody on that Sacramento side be able to guard Ant. If Ant gets to wherever he wants tonight, it wouldn't surprise me. Dude, the peripheral stats have been so good for a guy playing with 2 7-footers in the front court. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, 6 rebounds a game is super good from the position he's playing. with the teammates that he has. So I love Ant. He's playing with, and you think about their lineup, John. They started NAW, Mike Conley, and Rudy Gobert alongside Edwards and Towns. Who's shooting outside of Edwards and Towns in that lineup consistently? It's nobody. And then their sixth man is Kyle Anderson. It's a fantastic price. Obviously, the position eligibility is great. I feel like anytime you can get Ant under 9K, it's a comfortable place to be.
And he was having these ceiling games here when the steals and blocks were all rolling through. He kind of paid down a little bit, but back-to-back games with 2+ steals, 5+ assists, the rebounds. I mean, 10 rebounds, a little bit of an outlier there, but the scoring's been pretty legit, getting back on track. So I'm in on that range. And then, like I said, you want to go mid-tier with Poole, or you want to go Middleton and obviously Hield. All those guys are certainly in play. Wish they would give Ben Mathurin more of a look. I just don't think it's going to happen at $5,400 here. Mentioned Caruso at value. Beasley is kind of interesting if guys get ruled out tonight. Again, I just think that we could see some minutes for him. He played 33 minutes against Washington in that game where it was everybody active, and he had 16 actual, 26 fantasy points, so $4,800 going on there. When Giannis is off the floor, there's just a lot of usage that gets moved around. Now, a lot of it now goes to Dame. But, just more opportunities for guys to shoot. You mentioned NAW down here. Any other value shooting guards for you?
Nothing that's like – we talked about the Duarte thing on the show last night. It's kind of do you want to be contrarian today? Because he got in a lot of foul trouble in that first half. He got in a lot of foul trouble in general. But everyone, the highest rostered projected player tonight is Trey Lyles, right? Trey Lyles came back and played 28 minutes, and that's great. And we like Trey Lyles, and he's super cheap, and he's a good fantasy point per minute guy. Chris Duarte came out, hit 2 threes, had an assist, and then just picked up 2 fouls, and then just never established any rhythm for the rest of the game. 20 minutes, 5 fouls. I'm not saying that this is not possible again, because he's probably going to be guarding Ant. There's probably scenarios where, Chris Duarte's had a lot of fouls in extended run this year. It's been kind of like a thing that he's done. But, again, it's one of those situations. He has good eligibility. He's going to be the starter. If he comes out, hits multiple shots, and doesn't get in foul trouble, I could see a scenario where the minutes between him and Lyles and like Malik Monk are all a lot closer than what it was. Yeah. And what if Duarte ends up playing 30 minutes at 3,900? Everyone is playing Trey Lyles. Everyone. Nobody is playing Chris Duarte. Just throwing it out there that I think like in a tournament when you have that mindset, because in cash, like you're playing Lyles, you're moving on, you're not even thinking about Duarte. But in tournaments, Chris Duarte is the starter. At least that's what we know. From what we've seen, Chris Duarte is starting. If Lyles starts, obviously we recalibrate our thinking. But if the same lineup for Sacramento runs out there and there's no foul trouble again, 3,900 for a shooting guard small forward is not the worst.
No. And Aaron saying Lyles at 22 minutes is fine. Listen, Aaron, we talked about it on the show this morning. James and I have been playing a 19-minute Trey Lyles since he was on Denver like 8 years ago. So we know all about him being a fantasy point per minute beast for sure. Lewis and Gabriel both talking about Kyle Lowry here tonight. Now, obviously, last game had no Bam. There was no. We still know there's no Hero. We had a ceiling game for Kyle Lowry. That's not a game. That's not something I'm looking to continue to chase. I have a lot more interest here in Caleb Martin tonight, coming off of 26 minutes here with Duncan Robinson out, 5 of 12 shooting, 25 fantasy points here. It's also not my favorite matchup on the board going up against the Knicks here either. Again, if you want to get there, you can, but just looking at pricing, like there's a lot more chalkier plays in better spots. Lowry's at 5K, like Jaden Ivey here at $5,100 in a better spot. There were a lot more people going on there. Aaron's asking about Reggie Jackson. Houston, I have an efficiency chart here that I can show you that's tweeted out. Houston is number 1 in net rating in like defense and offense. They're just so good defensively. I don't know if I'm going in on Denver too much here outside of maybe Joker, but again, like they're a very good defensive team that I don't really want to go too far against them, honestly, at the moment here, especially Denver on the road. Not my favorite spot again, when I think there's some guys that you could play at similar price points that we've already discussed here. So small forward. I mean, we've talked some guys here. We did think Butler's price was pretty good at 83. You have Bam back now, though, so that changes maybe a little bit of what we're looking at. In terms of his value. Obviously, he can pop off, but like, is Friday after Thanksgiving the time we feel like we get Jimmy Butler's best efforts here, or you know what? So I'm not really in on Butler. To Gabriel's point, I feel like Edwards is going to drop 50 plus. Yeah, we just talked about Edwards at shooting guard, but he's got that small forward eligibility as well. More willing to play Anthony Edwards tonight at 87 as a spend-up small forward shooting guard than anybody else, I think, on this slate here today. Talk to me about the mid-tier, though. Some names that we've discussed heavily a lot this year. Do you find yourself gravitating towards a Keldon, Oscar Thompson, Herb Jones? Anybody here for you, James?
I do. Just quick shout to Paul George and Scotty Barnes. I think they're both fine. Obviously, Scotty has really good eligibility. They both have very good eligibility. They also have ceiling. So if you wanted to get there, by all means, do so. The Levine thing is an elephant in the room. If he doesn't play, obviously you can get to DeMar DeRozan. I'm probably not going to get to DeRozan. I like the price, but like other than a game without Levine, he's been living in that like 30 fantasy point range, and at the 7,300.
He's coming off a good game against OKC in OKC, which is a pretty tough place to be. So,
yeah, yes, no Levine. I'm
not saying Levine is out again, though. I mean, like,
yeah, if Levine's out, for sure, 7,300 is a very good price for DeRozan. Keldon Johnson in tournaments has a ceiling, has a floor. So, which Keldon you get to show up? You get the guy who suddenly has shown glimpses of actual peripheral stats, or do you get the guy that is going to score 20, but he's going to give you 2 rebounds and an assist, and you're like, well, shit, I just paid 7,100 for a guy who just gave me the same amount of fantasy points as he has actual points. So that's risky. And then you and I had the Oscar Thompson debate last night at $6,800. I think I'm still off Thompson. I'm just not sold on the price, and I know it's cheaper than it's been, but things don't get easier for him with Jalen Duren back. And the consistency or the lack of consistency scoring for me really hurts his upside at 6,800 when I feel like there are multiple multi-position eligible players like a Buddy Hield, like a Chris Middleton, like a Jaime Jaquez Jr. below him that I can save money on. And honestly, I feel like obviously Thompson has the premier matchup of the bunch, maybe not Middleton. That's probably a push, but like all those guys, I'm just confident are actually going to shoot.
Sure. I think for me, what it is again, looking at the matchup, we know they're going to be playing up pace and a higher game total than we've seen them play at any point here before. And then what did we talk about? Atlanta is basically the comp to Indy right now. He played 35 minutes against Atlanta. He had 47 fantasy points. And as we talked about this morning, if you're looking for a low rostered play in this game, no one's playing Oscar Thompson. Like he's 10% rostered. So everybody's feeding in on Cade and Hield, and obviously if Halliburton gets ruled out, like you'll see more guards getting played. I bet Turner becomes a popular play. Jaden Ivey's popular. Oscar Thompson's getting left behind, and he certainly has the ceiling. We've seen it. I mean, rebounding, even with Jalen Duren and those guys, are legitimate. We know the defense is legitimate here, and if the shot drops, just like I kind of have talked about with some of these other defensive players, like a Herb Jones, like Caruso to an extent, guys that you can lock in defense, and he's also giving you still the elite rebounding. If he just hits a couple more shots now in a spot where he's going to be paying at a high pace and a total he's never really been at before, I mean, the upside is for sure there. He's been fouling out of these games, which hasn't helped him either. 22 fantasy points in 17 minutes. He gets in foul trouble, 26 fantasy points in 30 minutes. He fouls out 20 fantasy points in 24 minutes because he gets 5 fouls. I mean, the upside, I think, is really there for Oscar Thompson to be a low roster play that might have 50 fantasy point potential tonight.
I will.
And that's the end of my rant on Oscar Thompson.
I hope for your lineup sake that it does. And I don't disagree with that line of thinking. I can't click on him based on the Atlanta game. I'm not going to click on him based on the Atlanta game.
Value guys, you mentioned Jaquez already, $5,300. Is that the spot for you?
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, the minutes are there regardless of who's in and who's out at this point. I mean, he hasn't played less than 28 minutes since November 11th. And I mean, 27th, 27, I guess, against Chicago. But that was an absolute floor game. Back-to-back 34 fantasy point games, 22 and 19 actual points. He's very versatile. You can play multiple positions. And they're without Duncan Robinson. So what do they do in the starting lineup? My assumption is Caleb Martin, probably. Yeah. But would it surprise you if they were like, nah, Jaime Jaquez in the starting lineup. We're just running like this, like a bigger starting lineup tonight. It wouldn't. So I'm definitely in on Jaquez. He's been a really good fantasy point per minute guy. Not great in the minutes without Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero this year, which is a little alarming. It's 88 minutes, so obviously things can come around. But that is like a random duo to not have a good fantasy point per minute output. Like no Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero, and you're not producing. I don't. So worth mentioning that he hasn't had great numbers without. He was hitting or exceeding this value. You're right. I see through you, and it's not like I'm not like against it necessarily, but I just think that at a position where there's
a lot of places. It's again for an 8-game slate, the mid-tier tonight is ridiculous. Yeah. But like I said, I'm just calling him out as we want exposure to this game, and if everybody's playing all the same plays, there is a guy that has shown a 50 fantasy point ceiling that no one's on. So, I think that there's just a pivot that could potentially be made in that scenario. Because if Halliburton gets ruled out, you're playing just 5K guys on the Pacers, and it's going to allow you to play whoever you want on the Piston side. So, it's just the way you can kind of bring it about. We mentioned Middleton already. For those of you, maybe you're just joining us here now. And if you are just joining us here now and haven't already hit that like button, we would certainly appreciate you do so on today's show. But we're definitely in on Middleton. He's a core play for us here today. The 29 minutes the other day was great. And now that Giannis is questionable, whether Giannis plays or not, we still like Middleton. I think regardless, we'd like him a lot more, obviously, if Giannis gets ruled out just because of the usage. But we're definitely in on Middleton here today. After Jaquez, where are we looking? Any value off your radar here today?
Just one more point on this Ausar Thompson thing with I see through his assists. There also wasn't Jaden Ivey in the starting lineup. So I think that is like kind of a factor as well.
A facilitator as much. I think that's why we've seen Cade actually have the ceiling assist lately. Killian ran the offense a little bit more. Jaden Ivey feels more of an offensive first. But to that point, maybe that takes away from some of the stuff for Thompson there. So
that's my thinking. More so than like facilitating, it's more so he's just has the ball in his hands a lot more because that's what Jaden Ivey has. He's creator of offense for himself. Yeah. So it was more so that the latter point that you made. The other mid-tier guys, Kyle Anderson, 4,800. That's dipping into the value tier. I don't think there's much left after Jaquez, but 4,800 for Kyle Anderson is safe. I don't love that he's getting so much ownership. That for a guy who takes 6 to 7 shots a game, I would be okay fading if he's going to be a popular play. Like I am definitely okay with not having to jam Kyle Anderson into my lineups. Like I like Kyle Anderson, but if you're telling me he's going to be the 3rd highest rostered player, by the way, rostership has been updated. I guess he's fallen down. Sorry, he's the 5th highest rostered player. That's my mistake. 5th highest rostered. I'm okay not clicking his name. I'm also okay if you last piece in like 4,800. He's safe for cash games, I'd say. But ultimately, I know you touched on Caleb Martin at shooting guard, but 4K for Caleb Martin just feels super, super secure. His minutes jump up to 28. And, people say he was robbed of a conference finals MVP last year. Like he is a clear member of this rotation. He is a key member of their team in general. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Caleb Martin start, approach 30 minutes, all that good stuff. So he would probably be my favorite value at this position.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on over to the power forward position here. You have Giannis again, went for 70 in that game against Washington in 34 minutes. They blew them out of that game here. He went 20 of 23. Just monster performances, but now he is questionable with an illness. Midday downgrades, again, generally not great in the NBA, so we'll have to pay attention to that. But then we have Wemby, $8,800, Randall, Zion, and then Towns again was the cover of the morning show. If not Giannis and Wemby, I just went to Towns here today as a top spend.
Yeah, I like that. He's had a really, really good season, and it's kind of similar to what we were talking about with Edwards. It's him and Edwards that are going to facilitate the entire offense. Like Mike Conley is going to pass and spot up three. NAW is definitely defense first, and Gobert we know is lobs, offensive rebounds, no post moves, despite being in the NBA for 10 years now, and like that's just what he's going to be. And he gave everyone COVID, so like develop an offensive move, bro. Yeah. No, I shouldn't be hating Rudy Gobert. He's a good basketball player. But yeah, I love Karl-Anthony Towns outside of Wemby and Giannis. I will say, like, Wemby has kind of weirdly spoke to me all day today. I don't know what it is. I don't have, like, there's nothing, like, concrete as to why I'm like, maybe it's just that 4-minute stretch in preseason when Wemby posted that, like, insane run of, like, 3, block, rebound, assist, steal, 2 and 1 block, and it was like a 4-minute span. You're like, wow, this dude is like actually just, he's like when you typed in and GTA back in the day when you were like LT, R2, triangle, and then you had infinite money. Like that's what Wemby feels like. It just feels, it feels like a cheat code. So if this game can stay competitive, and that's obviously the concern. The Spurs have been terrible on the road this year. The Warriors haven't been great at home, right, but 10-point favorites at home. We see this every slate with the Warriors this year. They've been like big favorites at home, and
with Draymond out, I think attacking their front court just makes a lot of sense right now. So
yep, 2-6 at home, by the way, this year. Not against the spread. That's just straight up. They're 2-6 at home. This is a complete flip than it was last year. Vassell being back obviously helps the Spurs like score the basketball. And the ceiling has been, I mean, we've seen he's gone for 50 plus 4 times this year, and he's gone for 60 twice. Yeah. If you get 60 from Wemby at 88, you're in a good spot. So for tournaments, I like Wemby right there with Towns and Giannis.
Yeah, 100% in there. Obviously, if we get no Giannis here, Kyle Kuzma becomes also a very strong play here. We talked about him a little bit. Went for 50 in that game where they lost. He played 31 minutes, followed it right up with a 62 fantasy point outing. I don't know where these assists are coming from, but we did kind of correlate it with the fact that, hey, he now has 23 assists in 2 games, and Jordan Poole has had 2 of his highest scoring shooting games of the year as well. These 2 guys just playing the 2-man game here for Washington, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, Gafford coming off 15 actual, 14 actual, right? So like easy rolls to the rim for Kuzma, maybe. Like they're playing Tyus Jones a little bit more. Tyus Jones is scoring double figures. So it does seem like Kuzma is just, the offense is just kind of flowing through him, and Jordan Poole's spotting up, taking shots, taking a lot of them, but hitting more than he was earlier in the year. Yeah, I mean,
I know that Kuzma went for 52 in that game against Milwaukee. I don't know if I would trust him to do it again if Giannis is in, but if he's out, I would have some interest in playing him.
I like a ceiling price too.
Yeah, right? Well, that's how I feel, right? Like you're not getting a great discount coming off of the ceiling game here. Not my spot, not my favorite spot unless there's no Giannis here. I'd rather just play Towns. Siakam, I'm talking about ceiling games coming off of another one, 57 fantasy points. I know Chicago plays slow. But would you run it back here with Pascal?
He has a ceiling, so I can't fault you. 8,200 is a good price, so I can't fault you if you want.
Guy we were paying almost $10K for last year, right?
I think to begin the year, it was like up by 10K. And then it was the Scotty. I think it was the Scotty show.
10-1 to open the year. Yeah. And worked his way down. So definitely could be a bottom barrel price tag here for Pascal Siakam as he works his way back up the chain. You got Quiet 81. Again, I'm not going to argue. If you want to play Leonard, that's fine for me. Bobby Portis would obviously be coming in play.
Yeah.
We talked about not liking him at 6K with Giannis in, but if Giannis is out, he's got 40 plus fantasy point potential. So him and Brook Lopez. I mean, this offense is pretty interesting if Giannis gets ruled out when it comes to where the upside is going to sit here. You talked about Jaquez already. Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith would be the next two to discuss here. Nesmith had been starting, but if he gets ruled out again, it goes back to Toppin. If Halliburton's out, the usage kind of spreads itself about, and it's another good spot here against Detroit for either of these players.
Yeah, I'm probably okay getting to either. Nesmith, I'm okay with getting to him if he starts. I'd also be okay getting to Toppin coming off the bench. I mean, even in that game against Atlanta, he played 34 minutes, and Nesmith played 25. So they definitely shared the floor
I think
together.
That early foul trouble for Nesmith gave Obi the little bit of the boost because he also got hot in that game because both teams shot 60% and like 50% from three. So they were able to, he just stayed on the floor because he was running good there. And Nesmith had 3 fouls in the first half. Basically didn't get back in that game for the second half. So could be a little bit more of an even timeshare, but I'm in on whoever starts in this game.
Okay.
Any other value power forwards for you?
I mean, what do you do with Highsmith is
whoever's
incredibly volatile.
Yeah, I don't know. Now that Bam is back, if I really want to go too much into this Knicks matchup for Miami, personally. You mentioned Patrick Williams could start. He's $3,600. If he gets back in that lineup, I think you could certainly give him a look. But I don't really have much else. There was some rostership earlier in the day on Naz Reid. Has that gone away a little bit? Still sitting at 15 to 16%.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy who is a fantasy point per minute player. Yeah. Exactly 1 per minute this year. 21 minutes a game, 21 fantasy points per minute, per game. And he backs up both positions, comes in if there's foul trouble for one of them, for Towns or Gobert, and saw a slight minute bump with no Jaden McDaniels. So, I mean, I would say Naz Reid feels like a last piece in type of play, but if I don't hate it if that's where you end up.
Center, we talked about it. The other two top price plays get in, and there's so much value. How many people just gravitate towards Joker here?
Dude, nobody is playing.
If we get actual rule outs of Giannis and Halliburton, I think that may change.
Well, didn't that happen? What was the last? It was the Orlando slate where was it the Orlando slate or I think it was the Orlando one where it was he was projected 10%. It was him and I forget what other star the other night it was, and they were both 10%. And I remember you commenting on it, and then the slate locked and he was 40% on, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's hard to just gauge the field getting because at first they're I wonder if I can't get to Jokic, shit, I just got to play Jokic. That's the field thing. My thinking, 80 fantasy points every night when he doesn't get thrown out.
And he had it against Houston in Houston earlier this month. So
also, I do love the shout that Sean just gave on Josh Richardson because he's just been firmly playing every game, 26 plus minutes in 6 straight games. So I would be perfectly fine getting to Richardson as a last piece in.
Yeah.
It hasn't really netted a high ceiling the minutes, but we know he can knock down some shots. And
I don't mind him. The Joker thing for me, again, I mean, this game only ended up with a 211 game total, and he went for 85.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
He would be the only one in Denver. We said this earlier. He'd be the only one in Denver I'd be willing to play, and I'm willing to spend up for it too. Aaron said he thinks both those guys play. I mean, it's possible, but it's just a midday downgrade isn't always the greatest sign. One is a sprained wrist, one's an illness. So, I mean, we'll see. I hope you're right. I hope they do both play. Keep their ownership interesting. But I would have no problem being able to get the Joker. I guess the problem we have with paying up for center is because there is some pretty elite value that could open up, or at least maybe interested in at the center spot, going all the way down. Right? You mentioned Trey Lyles. He's $3,300. He played the 28 minutes. We talked about him. Could be in for 20 to 28 minutes, depending on starting and injury reports and all that stuff there. Always been a really good fantasy point per minute player. But then we have to talk about what Daniel Theis has been up to. The last 2 games in the rotation for the Clippers, 21 and 20 minutes, ceiling scoring game, ceiling rebounding game, hasn't actually given you any blocks. He's only given you 1 steal. This is a guy that was a decent shot blocker at his time in Boston. If he's really rolling into this rotation for the Clippers around 20 minutes a night, I think there's some potential for him here as another value punt center play. Because we talked about it. We've always been willing to play backup Clipper centers. They just tend to fit well, even through different coaching regimes, right? Like Montrezl Harrell, Plumlee, Hartenstein, Theis rolls in there, all of a sudden 20-plus fantasy points in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Lyles, I think, is the better play, and that's obviously the
more secure minutes potentially.
Yeah, but there's also a 42% gap in ownership, right? Everyone's getting to Trey Lyles, who is a career backup. No offense to him, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. He's been in the NBA for a long time. Like, you're doing something right to be in the top 1% of the world, but.
Daniel Theis started for playoff teams.
Theis has started. I mean, he just won the FIBA World Cup with Germany over the summer as a starting center, and has come to the Clippers and has been they're clear. Like, they started using PJ Tucker as their backup center, and now PJ Tucker's kind of being iced out of the rotation because Daniel Theis has been so good. I definitely think Theis.
You want to hear the numbers?
Sure.
When Daniel Theis is on the floor this season for the Clippers, 1.4 fantasy points per minute.
I mean, not sustainable. Like, probably not sustainable over the course of a year.
Probably not. Montrezl Harrell was like a 1.3.
True. There's always the foul risk with Zubats. There's always
foul risk with Daniel Theis. That's the reason that's the reason I kicked out of Boston, basically. Yeah. I never saw a hand he didn't like to slap. But
so I can't disagree with the Theis thing. Like, again, I'm playing multiple lineups tonight. I'm definitely gonna have more shares of Trey Lyles than I have with Daniel Theis. Probably even with the field on both. Like, Lyles' projection is 47%. Probably would be good, like getting to 50% Lyles, 4% Theis. Like, if you're playing 20 lineups, get him in
one lineup.
You get one lineup, 2 lineups. Like, yeah, I think that would be good because it is like there are clear values, but it's like a pretty that means, are you playing Jokic? Are you doubling center? Are you are you handicapping yourself at your util? So depends. We just talked about Obi.
You like him I like him more if he's starting. We have to know the Neesmith injury news here.
Yep.
But great production lately. And Aaron, he just signed with the Clippers. He's played 3 games with them. He got his feet wet in 10 minutes, and then he's played over 20 minutes the last 2 games, giving you 27 and 30 fantasy points off the bench for them. Just he's just, dude, he is out. He's just balling right now. So Dolphins are just running away from this game right now. No one's surprised to see that happening there. All right, so we talked about Jokic. We talked about the value. Let's talk about the mid-tier.
Good drop there, John. Good Dolphins drop there.
No, just, Mostert just ran like a 40-yard touchdown.
Not going to say that I didn't play Raheem Mostert in my showdown captain spot today.
There you go. Because you did, or because you didn't?
Because I did.
You did. Good. All right, mid-tier guys at the center. Again, Sabonis we're in. I'm not Sabonis. Jokic we're in. I'm not playing Sabonis. I don't really want to play Bam. Don't think I'm going to get there. Towns, we talked about at power forward. Where are you in the mid-tier? Like, for me, if Haliburton gets ruled out, I feel obligated to play Miles Turner.
Oh, good luck.
I feel obligated. I feel like I have to throw Miles Turner in a lineup if Haliburton ends up being ruled out of this game. The usage rate, we know for Turner can be ridiculous. Over the course of his career, it's 1.16 fantasy points per minute with Haliburton off the floor. on the year. He hasn't played a ton of minutes without Halliburton this year, which probably isn't a big surprise, but that's a good fantasy point per minute. It's a decent usage rate. It's up over 20% here. I think that Turner finds himself in a pretty good spot against Detroit if Halliburton gets ruled out tonight.
I will say on the fantasy point per minute front, he actually loses 3, and you said it's not a big sample. 3% usage loss, and he loses fantasy point 0.1 fantasy point per minute.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree in theory. You would think the offense could flow through Miles Turner a little bit more. I'm just not sure how he gets I don't know. I'm a little indifferent there. It's a great spot against Detroit, obviously. The minutes, but we're about to talk about a bunch of. I like Valanciunas. Same thing. Minutes are just so super insecure. You don't know when he's going to play 30.
Lately.
They have been better. And who knows in that Sacramento game if that game's not 40 points in the third quarter, and I think he left in that game. Definitely can get there. Portis is a question mark just with what we don't know. I mean, Brook Lopez is someone that we've talked about a bunch lately, and he's had a really, really high ceiling in 4 of his last 5 games, 38 plus in 4 or 5. What if there's no Giannis? Is Brolo not now one of the best? I mean, dude, we're talking about a guy priced as the same price as Middleton with crazy block upside. You're not going to ever get double doubles at it. Brook Lopez, 9 rebounds is a miracle. He's always been scared of rebounding, but he can space the floor really well. He can score at times. I don't know, 1,500 for Brolo if there's no Giannis feels great.
Yeah, what are you talking about? They started playing more minutes. They left him on the floor there without Giannis on the floor this season. Again, he's never going to have a high usage rate. 1.16 fantasy points per minute is third best behind Middleton and Lillard. So not really surprised there. Lillard's 1.6. I mean, that's going to be
pretty good.
37% usage rate, 1.6 fantasy points per minute without Giannis on the floor against the Wizards. Could go for 70 there. Middleton's 1.23, Lopez 1.16. They bumped up Gafford's price. Would Gafford be appealing to you if there's no, in general, or no Giannis? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, if you were to tell me Daniel Gafford would play 30 minutes a night, I would have interest typically on most nights. I mean, he had that ceiling game with no blocks, and we know Daniel Gafford's another guy who has a lot of potential on the defensive end. So, he's not going to be 40% like he was the other night. So if you want to play Daniel Gafford, he'll be super low owned, and as long as he can if he stays out of foul trouble, he has upside.
Agreed. All right. Any other thoughts here? Again, we did talk about some of the value plays already at the center position. Anybody new for you?
No, nothing. Not with Bam being back. R.I.P. Orlando Robinson.
Yeah, right. No kidding. All right. Let's get this going here. Let's build a lineup for the folks here. How's that sound?
Let's do some lineup building, brother.
Without knowing, obviously, the status of these guys, it will make it a little bit more difficult, which is exactly why we always say make sure you hang around, get in that Discord, and check us out there so we can get you guys ready to go for this main slate here this evening. What's your first plug, though, James?
Ivy, Lyles, Hield probably would be a core 3 for me. Middleton 4.
Ivy, Lyles, and Hield. I like that.
And Middleton probably just starting point.
Okay. Let me. I'm having a slight freeze issue here. Give me 1 second.
I could tell.
Okay.
We're looking at your concerned face about. I wonder when my computer is not.
Yeah, one of my computers going to actually move when I hit the button. Yeah. All right. So here we go. All right. So we got Ivy, Hield. You said Lyles?
Middleton, Lyles. Yeah, I think that's a safe. And then we'll just be different because we're just super chalky in that instance. We could just now be different everywhere. We have any money to spend any which way we'd like.
I wish I knew if those big guys were playing because I'd plug one of them in.
Well, we could. I mean, why don't we build with them and then build one without them real quick?
We'll build a Giannis, I guess, here.
Because like if there's no Giannis, my builds are starting with Dame.
Sure.
He went for 1,000 fantasy points the other day.
Here's my Halliburton Giannis.
Oh no, the Caleb Martin.
Yeah.
It's like Caleb Martin.
Yeah, Caleb Martin's there. If we're going different, why not? You want Oscar Thompson?
Infinite.
By the way, Oscar Thompson, I looked it up with Durant on the floor, 1.2 plus fantasy points per minute. So, and actually with Durant and Ivy, now it is also a super small sample size, like 20 minutes, same thing, 1.21. So he's out there playing $8,500.
Towns,
yeah, why not? See, we got a little build there. Levine and White will be game time decisions for everybody.
Death taxes updates just
at least it's a 7:30 start, right? So
yeah. Okay, how about this? What if they don't play? Both don't play.
Both don't play. If both don't play, I think I just go to Joker.
Like I'm saying, no. If both Bulls don't play.
Oh, if both Bulls don't play. Oh, you probably play Rose. Well, I still don't really want to play against Toronto though. It's not really like my favorite game. Right, so
I know, but there's so much that opens up there.
You got to play Io. I guess Caruso would be a good play. I like Caruso still.
Yeah, I mean DeRozan.
I think I would just stick with Caruso, truthfully, over.
Okay.
So we did Martin, I guess. Caleb at the forward. Caruso at your guard spot. 6K with Joker.
6K with Joker. That's a safe, comfortable feeling.
I agree.
When you,
if we're doing that and there's no Giannis, aren't we just like playing Portis? Right? Like,
yep, and then Brolo just like
not play Lillard.
Oh yeah, no, we'd have to play Lillard.
We would figure it out. Let's see here. Obi, 71 util. This is without Lyles, by the way. Let's see, 71. Get Poole in there. Could or as get Duran, as Sean was saying, Duran, no limitations.
You can. It's not my favorite spot. It's not a terrible one though.
So we plugged Lillard in there. Who's the punt for Chicago?
No, who's out?
Who's out?
Nobody's out.
No one's out yet, but Kobe White and Levine are game time decisions.
White was a midday downgrade. Levine questionable, but participated in shoot around. Mm-hmm. So seems like one is playing, one is not.
Right.
If I had to guess.
Is Thompson small forward only? What a big sad. Power forward here
for 71.
Yeah.
Well, you could move Towns there.
Let's go back to Bob.
Or you move Towns, or you could always move Towns there.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Towns power forward. And then
100 off your boy, Miles.
Yeah, I know. It's sad.
Smiles for Miles.
We go back.
If we're not, that's isn't.
We go back.
Yeah.
All right. Again, assuming there's no Giannis or whatever here. Probably need another pacer at some point, but I don't hate it.
Especially if there's no If there's no Halliburton, it's going to be
McConnell. Play McConnell at 42 or something. Yeah. So again, guys, just some example lineups. Way to build some things out here. We not knowing the news for another hour and a half. Any lineup you build at 7:25 might not be the same lineup you build at 7:30. So just stick with us here. You don't like any Denver guys besides Joker? I don't.
Same.
Again, if you want to get there, you can. What do we have? And what did those guys put up? Again, Joker went for 85, and again, that went for 211. Got 37 fantasy points for Houston, for Gordon there. Paying off around 5x return for him on that matchup. 41, you had the double, so 3-man show there. So again, it's just not my favorite spot to go with them. There's see if I can get the graphic. I'll show it everybody. And again, that was a week ago now at this point.
Houston's 4th in defensive rating, and I'll just while you're looking for it, 4th in defensive rating, 28th in pace. That doesn't matter as much to Jokic as it matters to it does not matter to Jokic because he's still the hub. The offense is flowing through Nikola Jokic. and then everyone has to work off him. There's just going to be a lack of possessions there for the teams that are 27th and 28th in pace. It's a pass for me. And if I lose to Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so we had like this come up there today. I'll hide your comment. This is tweeted out today. Efficiency landscape by the NBA, and their number one defensive net rating, 11 in offense.
Udoka picture is hilarious.
So again, they're just a tough matchup. I don't really, and we haven't had a ton of success going up against Houston lately, anyway. So again, I would play Joker because he's just a different breed of human, and he can do there. But it feels like you kind of got ceiling games out of Porter and Gordon last time out. It feels unlikely on the road you get ceiling games out of both of them there again. For those three, 85 fantasy points from Joker, 41 for Michael Porter, and 38 from Gordon. I mean, like, for those guys to have that kind of numbers with Joker going for 85, it just feels very difficult to imagine repeating itself. So, again, guys, we'll be in the Discord. If you have any questions for the rest of the slate, we'll be updating you there. Dylan Clemens is on the playbook there as well. We also have a deal going on right now for Black Friday. You scan that QR code, or you go to fansfarm.com/annual, use promo code HURRY. Our annual subscription package is now discounted. It's less than $16 a month for the year. Right now, our month-to-month price is almost double that. So if you want to go sign up for the annual sub, get a year's worth of premium content, including our Discord, including our fantasy baseball or fantasy football draft guides next season. You get access to our NFL DFS content all the way through week 12 of next year. All of our NBA DFS, NHL, MMA, MLB, NASCAR, PGA, you name it. If it's behind a paywall, you get access to it for less than $16 a month. When you sign up, scan the QR code and use promo code HURRY. So check it out today. Get your annual subscription package and go home, hopefully with a winner with us in the family here this evening. Final thoughts here. One last time, I'll throw the Listener League link in chat for everybody. If you haven't already joined tonight's contest, do so. $5 over on DraftKings. Come play against us here today. Use our own information against us. It happens all the time. And we will have a good weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you on Monday, and we'll see you then.